My name is Ray Lucio, and I'm running for Schleicher County Judge. I'm going to fight to end corruption in our county. Law enforcement officers who do not investigate other crooked law enforcement officers are crooked themselves. And they should be in jail. And at the very least, they should be fired today. It might be hard for a lot of you to accept this, but Texas Ranger Nick Hanna is one of these crooked cops. Now, if you're going to say, "Oh, it can't be true. Nick's a good guy. He's a good cop," and you're already in denial before you even seen the proof. So don't even bother watching the video. Just give you a real quick background. Melissa Elias and I met in June of 2013. At that time, she told me that her husband had abandoned her and their two children in March of 2013. Look at some of the messages, and I'm not argue with people who pursued whom. Um, I'll just fast forward to November of 2015 when I decided that there would be no future for us. And I came to that conclusion because one, I had found out that she had lied about the children born of her marriage. They weren't from her husband, which is David Elias. The other reason why is because what I had witnessed was men and high school boys, which I found out to be high school boys later on, coming and going out of her home in the middle of the night. So I just told her there would be no future for us at that time, and that was in November of 2015. She continued to contact me even through the new year, and in January of 2016, she started coming back over to the house in the middle of the night. I'm talking about 12, 1 in the morning, and staying for hours. In February, she found out she was pregnant, and then at the beginning of March, I would tell her she just needed to be honest with everybody because obviously she was didn't know who the father of her child was. So this is about the time I noticed her following me around and circling my house. She would circle where I was at my friend's house. She'd circle around their house. I noticed that she was taking pictures of me and she would video me while I was jogging. And then I noticed that George Zamarone, he was in a Tahoe in Schleicher County, Tahoe. He would follow me around and circle my house, and he'd sit behind my house behind a tree. So that's what I decided to do was to tell the Texas Rangers about the harassment, and then also to tell them about what happened, so that I wouldn't be committing a felony myself. So in May, I called Texas Rangers. I called the Midland office and left a message with a ranger. They didn't return my call. I drove to Midland office and left a message with a ranger. He didn't return my call, so I called El Paso and left a message with a ranger there and still didn't get a call back. So in June of 2016, I was arrested. I bonded out with cash and I waited to talk to the prosecutor. When I talked to the prosecutor, he told me that it was Melissa Elias and that he showed me all these pictures of me where I was at a baseball game or here or there driving down the street. And he told me he wanted to make a deal. And I told him that I wasn't making a deal because I didn't do anything. And then I tried to explain to him what was going on. So after I'd already been arrested, finally Nick Hanna calls me back. I bonded out, and a couple weeks later, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks later, he calls me, and he's already says he's talked to the deputies, and they were his friends, and they were good guys. He's talked to the sheriff, he's talked to the prosecutor, and he's already basically made up his mind. But he did tell me this. This is why I turned on the recorder. He said that if I wanted to continue on this complaint, that he would have to, that it wouldn't be a good thing for me, that he would have to look into everything I've ever done, which I said, I'm fine with that. And, I hadn't done anything, but that's what made me turn on the recorder was that he was threatening me. I said he was more interested in finding out what was going on with Melissa and the kids coming out of her house. So what I did was I tried to divert him back to, okay, I didn't know you were going to handle that. I was just reporting it because I didn't want to be in trouble for not reporting it. So I asked him if there was going to be another agency that would handle that, and I'll just talk to them about that. And this is what he said.
Ex-lover of a married lady. Number one is Texas. If you're going to engage in that kind of relationship, that tells me a little about your character to start with.
Okay, let me stop it right there. I'm going to tell you one of the biggest characteristics of what happens when you complain on a cop is that the cop who's taking that investigation will start off by attacking your character.
I just house at 1 in the morning?
No, I saw the kid there at 1 in the morning. And then,
and what evidence do you have other than you saw it? Did you take a picture of it, of his car?
No, I didn't take pictures of her. That would have probably been stalking, would it not? It'd probably been illegal. No.
Do you understand probable cause?
I do.
What is it?
Probable cause when you have a reasonability to assume that the crime has been committed.
You're pretty close. Facts and circumstances that would lead a reasonable person to believe.
Right.
So I've got to have some facts or circumstances.
Facts and circumstances. Like a reasonable person thinks that a high school student coming out of a teacher's house in the middle of the night is just, what, getting a math tutorial or what? Well, anyway, we've gotten way off track here. This call was about the deputy. Now we're over here talking about Melissa Elias and these boys that were leaving her house. So I kind of try to divert it back to the subject at hand. And this is what he says in this clip. Listen to what he says about the actual crime that she committed being a felony.
And you know what, I don't even, whatever happens with that is their own business. If this guy wants to, if she wants to have kids with other people other than her husband, and one of them happens to be a kid, which, is it not true that when you're a teacher that it's actually a felony to do that? I don't even know in Texas, okay?
Or it is a felony, but we're going from a pretty big stretch from a guy who's not an independent witness, as you are not. Making an allegation that some kids over there, because they're having sex. I've proved up some cases, and you're not even in the ballpark.
So he keeps on asking. Nick Hanna keeps on asking me for information, and like I said, I'm fully cooperating with law enforcement. So I give it to him, and then this is what he says. Concerned law enforcement officer, right? This is what he says.
Hey, what? You have some evidence, you bring it to me. If not, don't waste my time.
And so I'm going to just continue to be harassed, or what? I mean,
I don't think you're being harassed. If you're being harassed, feel free to document it, because I guarantee you they're going to document every stop they have with you.
that's right.
So he's already decided it's not harassment, and he's going to do nothing about a crooked cop. And out of nowhere, he says this.
Anyway, so
Leave this lady alone.
I haven't done anything to her. This is a
Leave this lady alone. He's already made a decision on that too, on whether or not I harassed Melissa Elias. Well, I went and talked to my attorney friend, and I let him listen to the audio, and he tells me that they're all crooked, and the best thing for me to do is just get out of town. So what I did was I put a for sale sign up in front of the house, like my attorney friend advised me to. And then I called Nick Hanna back on that Monday morning, and I told him, well, here's what I told him. I told him I wasn't coming in, and this is what he says. Notice that, just listen to the relief in his voice.
I'm gonna let you know that I won't be going in, and that the house is up for sale, and I'm out of this town.
I think that may be better for yourself and all parties involved.
Okay.
When an officer doesn't do the right thing, doesn't obey the law, doesn't protect the people from these law enforcement officers that are violating their rights, there are very big consequences to these. One, in this case, number one is an innocent man had to go to jail. Number two, they've allowed a criminal to continue to commit these multiple felonies. And number three, and probably the worst one of all, is this. Now, how likely do you think somebody will come forward whenever they do see a crime? How likely do you think they'll come forward and say anything if they're going to be intimidated, harassed, accused of things they didn't do? You've just perpetuated crime in the community. You actually are doing the opposite of what you're paid to do.